this point in time, I feel like I've got less and less to say. And
I can understand that.
Yeah, because something's happened. Happened. That's kind of changed my point of view. I really got interested in this idea of the song.
Yeah.
Was Edge talking to you about this?
Well, go on, because I'm not sure.
Well, this is something, the song, this is something which you two as such has not been very interested in, the song. We essentially just, it was like we worked with sound, and we structured that sound, and it was like they were like soundtracks, and sometimes they'd be beginning, middles, and ends and things. And since then, just in the last 6 months, this idea, this song has really hit on us.
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful thing. It's like out of the air. You just with a guitar or a piano or whatever it might be, with 3 or 4 chords, you say all you have to say. And it's incredible because this goes on the radio all over the world, and people, in traffic jams, turning on their car radios, people in traffic jams, they hear this song, or at the side of a road when they're working, they hear this song, or at home, at night, when people are, having their tea, or drinking their tea, and it's just something that never even dawned on me before. And I rang up Edge. I mean, telling the story, it's the most exciting thing that's happened, so I'm just going to tell you it. And I rang up Edge one night and I said, Edge, this is incredible thing that's happened to me. It's called the song, you've got. And I went through the whole thing with him. He said, oh yeah, I think I know what you mean. He said, isn't Pride one of those? And I went, yeah, I think that might be. And there's, and that we have written a few songs. But what I'm learning is that I want to be able to say what I've got to say in 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Something I've not even been interested in before. I never wrote words. A lot of the words were never written down. That's why they're not, written down on LP sleeves for them. So I never wrote them down. They were just impressions. And it was an impressionistic thing, just splashing these, paint and canvas, just words. And I'm, for the first time, and maybe it's wrong to talk about it before rather than after, but it's just something that I've realized that me as a singer, I've got to stop trying to explain myself. I've got to actually start trying to write songs that explain myself.
Which could mean writing a lyric first and then adapting music to it.
Yeah. Oh.
It's an old tradition, right?
That's right. Yeah, I think that's what it started. I mean, it's just an interesting thing that an interesting thing that we've come to.
Also, it must be, I'm trying to adapt, say, a really great poem to music, in the way that
Van Morrison's just done.
Schubert or someone would have done, taken a poem by some German poet like Heine or something, and actually tried to capture musically what that poem meant to him, rather than just come up with a slice of music and then just fit words to it in as convenient a way as possible. And I suppose the great, the Sondheims and so forth, and the Richard Rodgerses, work from that as well.
The thing about it, what I would like is I would like to continue with both extremes. I would like to. We were working with this title and this headline in mind. This thing, we were just it's extremes. This was just a word that we all had in our minds when we began working on The Unforgettable Fire, and it's a word that we still have in mind now as we work on new material. I want those extremes from the group, and in the same way as you want extremes of emotion, from anger and aggression to atmosphere, sensitivity, texture, tone, all that. I want those extremes now of craft. I would like to be able to write something in 3.5 minutes. So, and I've spent time on songs. A Sort of Homecoming. I actually, I redrafted the words. When I listened back to them, I could follow them, and I went through a process a few times. Other songs like Pride were just like, you write them very quickly, like in 5 or 10 minutes. And in fact, that whole song was written. The music was written in 5 minutes, and the words were written in 5 minutes and another time.
Really? It's funny, but you say yourself that Pride, you reckon, is a real song.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely majestic song. This was one of the best singles of last year. I think it's a breathtaking song. I love that song so much.
Thank you.
And the production as well. Ed was talking a bit about the sort of layering, layering in particular with reference to that song. It just seems to me, I listened to it and I thought, what is it that's unusually powerful about this song? It's something about just the relationship between the guitar and the drums. I can't put my finger on it, but it's a simple riff and everything. The whole feel of the dynamic of the production on that song is. Those drums are so deep. I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? Like very kind of deep sound. I love that.
When we put that together, it was just a situation. We were on stage. Adam put the guitar, plugged his guitar in, and he put the strap around his neck. And he and Larry, just in a moment, just were playing what is the root notes to the song. And I began to sing over it, and I was playing the guitar at the time, and Edge started to contribute. And at the end of a 5-7 minute period, the song was complete in all its, all the melodies, verse, chorus, the lot, complete. And when we stopped, some people around there were all asking about this, and I had my tape recorder, and I said, I've got it here. And so everyone came around, and I said, look, I think this is. I pressed in the button. It's just a buzz. The batteries were flat, and I had to go. At a later date, I had to actually decipher the white noise, and then we worked the song again, and that became.
One of the quotes I was interested in, I was going to ask about was, you said we write great pop melodies, but we don't structure them like that. We don't structure them like most pop bands structure pop songs, pop records. And it sort of made me think, to me, something like, Pride should have been, it should have been a huge hit in this country. And it sort of got me thinking, will you two ever have a Dancing in the Dark? And have that kind of top 10 breakthrough, because in a sense you're doing what there's a lot of comparisons one could make with Springsteen, in the sense that he's not been a singles artist, and he's not. And I don't know actually his sales track record, how many albums he's sold through his life, but it's like this album's been the real mega breakthrough for him in a way, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. We spent some time with Bruce Springsteen just a few weeks ago, and the kind of opening line was, well, Bruce, this has been, a really good year for you. He just looked, and it's most unlike him. He just went, yes, it has. And he just, this record has broken all the boundaries for Bruce Springsteen. What gets me about the record is how can I put this? It's like okay, before I say it, I used to say to Bruce, I used to say to him, have you ever thought about writing in the first person? He'd say, writing in the first person, he'd say, oh, I don't know, he puts a lot of him, there's a lot of him in the characters that he writes about. Or I would say to him, this setting, this is like a screenplay. Would you ever think about, bringing this to a conclusion as a 2.5-hour motion picture? Would you ever be interested in developing one of those songs? Kind of go, no, that 2.5 hours would be just enough time for them to screw it up, And I used to put on this record, and it was like he had spent. He's as a poet, he was very articulate in expressing the street, the sense of the street he grew up on, New Jersey, the turnpike, the imagery, very rich imagery, and I think he had quite a mastery of that craft, and yet this record is the most basic record, and it's what I like about the record so much is its humility. It's a man who is saying, no, I'm not going to actually become a movie star. No, I'm not going to develop my music into orchestral proportions. I'm actually going to strip it down even more. That's a very humble.
In a way, Born to Run did go over the top on that kind of orchestral mood, and he's kind of reined it in since then. When I first heard it, I thought, how can he get away with a record that's so simple and so, pure Bruce Springsteen. It's just Bruce Springsteen, but it's just even better Bruce Springsteen. It took a while for that to sink in, just the sheer quality of the songs, just eventually it blew me away, but it took a while.
Yeah, I think it's like, it took him 7 albums to speak like an ordinary man.
Yeah.
It took him 7 albums as a poet to actually not be a poet and be more of a poet. I can see this is going to be quite an interesting hour for me. I warn you, I am completely inarticulate at times, completely unable to explain myself, completely unable to even string 3 words together can be hard at times. And this is very tragic if people think you supposedly have a gift of the gab.
I've heard some very articulate statements you made in interviews.
Some days, I can get it together. Other days, I just can't get it together. And
well, my questions may not be too articulate. The first one, which some of these I asked The Edge, and the first one is the most banal question of all. I couldn't resist it, which is like, what is it like being a rock star? You could answer that how you will.
I wonder, what is it like being a rock star? I wonder. I'm sure there's a lot of people far better qualified to answer that. But I think I'm a kind of part-time rock and roll star, really. We kind of just... I think we are probably the worst rock and roll stars there ever was. I think we've all the wrong equipment. You know, we've all the wrong... I mean, these arms are just stuck on the wrong way, and, you know... I don't know. I mean, the stage is... I mean, just another version of the high-heel shoe, I suppose. You know, the stage is a platform boot, but I don't. I went through a period of thinking maybe I ought to be, a rock and roll star. You know, of kind of wishing. Wishing I could be like all those people, you know, that would be on top of the pops. I mean, when I was 14, you know, and I saw Mark Bono, and he came on stage with sweat already in place, you know, and, you know, get it on. I'm just a cheap steer for your love. I mean, that was it. Or, you know, my first impression of, if anyone asks me, well, what is a rock and roll star, I think Elvis Presley. You know, I don't think of Van Morrison as a rock and roll star. I don't think of U2 as rock and roll stars.
I guess some people do, and they're probably mistaken.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, like I basically, you know, I was saying to somebody recently, they were saying kind of taking a similar train of thought. And I said, I think a lot of people come along to see you fall on their flat on their face, you know. But part of it with you two is the falling over and the picking yourself up off the ground. Part of it with you two is that late at night in a coffee shop in Philadelphia, I will say something that will be putting a noose around my neck, and I'll be hung from a tree for the next... And people say, that guy, you know, I mean, there's a real love-hate thing with the group, you know, and that's simply because we are expert at shooting ourselves in the foot, and both in performance, because the performance thing is so on edge. I met Elvis Costello a few months back, and he said to me, he said, I'm ambivalent about you too. He said, I have two attitudes. I have two, you know, I love it and I hate it. And he said, you walk this, he said, but I'll say one thing, you walk this tightrope that nobody else, he says, all your contemporaries won't walk. They're afraid to walk it. And he said, when you stay on it, you know, I bow my head, but you fall off it so many times. And there was no answer to that, because the answer is yes, you know, we do fall off a lot. And on stage I will try for something, and it will work. And of course, if that's... But it might work. That's the point.
Yeah.
It might work.
So I thought it was a really good performance tonight, I must say. I know maybe because you were straining a bit more, it was. I enjoyed the performance more than I did Saturday. I think. I mean, I liked Saturday's show a lot, and I mean it's the best shows I've ever seen you do.
We are playing better now than we've.
It's tremendous.
Isn't it odd, you know, that these places that we run away from, you know, we ran away from for so long, and you know the reason we're playing these places. The reason it's strange you should mention it, but already, but when we came to the US, we played a little small club, Mud Club in New York. And then we
Yes.
play the Ritz. Some people sitting in the Ritz. We just like got off the boat, you know, or the aeroplane, and we plugged the guitars in and tuned them up on stage, and then went to the front of the stage and fell off, you know. And, you know, played this gig in New York, in America, and there was some people there from Premier Talent, and they said, afterwards, they said, it's going to be interesting when you play Madison Square Gardens.
Really?
Yeah. Madison Square Gardens. And we thought it had a finger signed to Madison Square Gardens because that was like everything we didn't want to do at that time. Playing these aircraft hangars, these tin boxes. Like, at one point, this was everything we were against. We were against it.
Yes.
And we were against it right up until the time I went to see Bruce Springsteen play Wembley Arena.
Okay.
And I sat there, and I was halfway. I was in the back. I mean, I was like, I was at the, you know, behind the sound desk, and I didn't. I mean, it could have been the Bag It in Dublin, as far as I was concerned. I said, it's possible. In fact, there's so many people here that there's even more of an event going on. You know, instead of having a backdrop of, you know, kind of stained glass windows, we've got people. That's it. People, you know. People. You know, it's strange to have people looking at people. Those people in the back, you know, they're the best seats. Because they're with the band. They consider themselves to be on the stage, and that those people, and they will say to themselves, audience are good tonight, you know. I'm sure they do.
Yeah. And of course, there's the whole, you know, this getting to this arena stage, you know, is the thing, doubtless, it's got you the most flack in kind of hip English circles, you know. There seems to be this idea of, like, you two almost betraying everything that's most sacredly, you know, kind of narrow-minded and small about the hip English pop scene. You know what I mean? Why are you two doing this? They're going to America and they're doing everything that would
playing Madison Square Gardens,
that shouldn't be done, you know. And I mean, I've just seen these two shows, and you know, I have to say that I think you're doing it, and it's worth it, and it's really thrilling.
The music sometimes is absolutely in sync with your circumstance. It's a funny thing, and we're making big music right now, and it's big music, and we have, when you know, the start of Pride, you know, boom, 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 that goes right, just, you know, it floats over the crowd, and to confine it is actually, it's living a lie in some ways. I am feeling more. I've been singing better, performing better than ever before in these places, in these boxes.
This is our first arena tour in this country. You know, first.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Meaning,
arenas are the hockey places.
I know the biggest really all.
Well, the biggest indoor places.
Yes.
I mean, you can get roofed stadium style things, but these are like this is what most groups actually end up playing.
Yes.
You know, like Prince is playing arenas, and so
That's right.
Springsteen plays them. The only thing above that are outdoor stadiums, which bands do in their own right. It's not like England or Europe where it's all festivals during summer. Bands do go and play stadiums in their own right, but it's a whole different ballgame, I think.
Yeah.
But this is the first time we've actually done an exclusively arena tour. Previously, we've done maybe 2 or 3 in the course of a theatre tour, but it's a different thing, you know. Really, it's far more exhausting.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I suppose that the stage is a little bit bigger, so there's a little bit more
Room to
you've got a bigger space to work in.
But psychologically, I imagine more exhausting too.
Emotionally and psychologically, it's far more draining. You know, sometimes I come off stage, you know, and just I feel absolutely empty.
Yeah.
It's quite an experience.
Yeah. I've been to a few shows in places the size of the Coliseum the other night, Hartford, and it still knocks me out. Just the scale of the thing. You know, when you look up, there are people like stretching into the sky.
Yeah.
And you actually lose sight of them.
Yeah.
They're so high up there. It's very exciting, really incredibly exciting. It's not something one is used to from England.
No.
I mean, I don't know how big Wembley Arena is, but I don't go there very often anymore.
No, it's a different thing actually, because Wembley, I mean, we've played Wembley and I think we made a success of it, but there definitely is a different attitude to these sort of venues. In America, everybody plays there, and in fact, a lot of bands fail,
Yes.
sort of become really very boring in them.
No.
Hello.
Hi.
Are you putting here a coffee table?
Just here would be lovely. Thanks. I'll sign again, yeah?
Yeah, please.
I'll practice in the old signature.
Yes.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks.
See you.
Yes, bye-bye.
So you can go and you can see Ted Nugent or anyone, in arenas. So people's kind of awe of the venue, I suppose, they see it as just this normal way to see a gig.
That's right.
And their expectations aren't as high. Oh yeah, thank you. I think when a band that really have thought about it come into an arena and make it work, the audience are really amazed. So someone like Springsteen, who's really made those venues work, he gets incredible receptions at his shows.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Bruce live?
I've not yet, no. It's a big regret of mine. I can't
Yeah.
wait. I mean, I do hope that he'll come to England. And,
I haven't
I'll
seen
see him
this tour, and I think he's playing 4 hours, every night, which I mean it's great that anyone could actually not collapse or send his audience to sleep in a 4-hour show. But I think he'd probably be more successful if he did maybe 3 hours, something like that.
Yeah. 4 hours does sound...
It sounds incredible.
On both sides of the fence, it sounds pretty hard to believe. I've just heard he was kind of playing Dublin, wasn't he?
I think he still is.
There's been some trouble over it.
Well, the last show that was in that venue, which is Slane Castle, where we actually recorded the album,
Right.
was Bob Dylan last summer. And after the show, they had the dangerous combination of a bar extension in the village from 11:30, I think, to 1 o'clock, but without any extra police. And the normal Slane police force is like 6 guys. So what happened? I think some people got a bit out of hand in the village and started, getting rowdy. And instead of going in and trying to just, smooth things over and ease, calm things down, I think the police that were there got a bit heavy and sort of threw them into jail or something. And that caused about 24 or so kids to just go over the top and start smashing windows and stuff. And then it was described as like a riot involving hundreds of people, but actually I know it was about 24. And after that, I mean, the police were under siege for about an hour. We had to call in reinforcements from another town. I think the people of Slane got a bit freaked out about their security situation, and so they're the ones that are objecting now to Bruce playing, which is kind of, it's a bit off because, they were quite happy to, make a load of money out of the rock shows that were there. I mean, it was them that insisted on the bar extension because of the extra revenue. Slane, by the way, Slane Village consists of about 5 bars, about 3 houses, and, so it's like a typical Irish town. The town centre is normally, the shops and bars are normally about the same ratio, but very few houses around.
I have a very banal question to open with. If you were asked to define it or just sum it up in 30 words, 50 words, what is it like being a rock star? A big rock star.
I don't think I've found out what it's like because I've no wish to really explore that side of it. You know what I'm saying? It's like we've all learnt how to deal with people really, really wanting to meet us and wanting to get autographs and all that. And that's fine. I don't think the external changes that occur are really a problem with people, but sort of internal things that affect you. The great thing about this band, I think, is that none of us are prepared to let the others, get out of hand on that score. If there's 3 other guys who are going to give you such a kick up the arse if you start, getting out of hand or whatever. Yeah. And that's very healthy. I don't think we've actually changed at all over the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know why that is, but I suppose it's because we didn't want to. Really, we never became a group because we were attracted by the idea of being, stars or famous or anything like that. We became a group because we really wanted to make good music. That was kind of the impetus. So having arrived in this position, it's not like our life's ambition being fulfilled. It's like, we're delighted, we're absolutely over the moon about it, but it doesn't lead us into all this kind of rock and roll posturing or any of that sort of ego massage stuff, which I just find really obnoxious.
So you have found it possible to more or less carry on living and sort of feeling, inside up here as you always felt, and feel like a human being. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's how I've always seen you as being. Certainly to your credit that you don't project the kind of unease that a lot of people do in your position. I suppose unhappiness that eventually comes with this lifestyle.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? It seems to, and almost more so with black artists as well.
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
It's very sad, I think.
I think I don't know whether perhaps because in America, to make it there's such pressure on black people, such kind of subtle pressure on black people to make it in the white world, to make something of your life, and if you kind of rise out of the ghetto in that sort of cliched way, I think you then probably have to deal with all those sort of emotional problems and what do I do now?
Yeah.
Now I've made it.
I think the attitude is, now I've made it, I'm just going to milk this for everything I can.
Yes.
Just in terms of
power, complete loss of control. So, you get people like Prince who are very, I don't know, who seem actually very kind of guilt-ridden almost about what they're doing.
Marvin Gaye was the same.
Yes, that's right.
I'm reading his biography of Marvin Gaye.
Is it the one written by one of his aides or somebody?
It's some guy who actually co-wrote Sexual Healing, the lyrics.
That's right, yes.
He's been a friend for a long time because most of the book was written and in interviews done, obviously before Marvin got shot, so it wasn't like...
So it was a planned biography.
Yeah, it wasn't it's not a book kind of cashing in on the death of Marvin Gaye. It's like a far more serious book. It's great, actually. It's very informative.
I look forward to it. I don't think it's come out in England yet.
Yeah, it's very good. It shows you the sort of helplessness, when, I don't know if I'm sure you've experienced it, everyone has, where they just start taking on the character of their parents, and they actually start displaying all the things that they were fighting against as kids.
Yeah.
It's that sort of terrible inevitability about that, and that comes across so strongly in the book. Marvin's struggle with his father, which was really some of the reasons he was such a, when he was able to perform freely, why he had such a power was his early life with his father was such an emotionally tumultuous thing, and to see Marvin sort of starting to just evolve into his father is kind of funny, kind of sad as well.
Richard Cook in 1982, when he went with you to America, he talked about he called it the ponderous new dinosaur tag, which many people want to tie on the group. I don't know, is that clear to you, what he meant by that? Just that sort of thing. I mean, I think I was guilty of it myself, actually, in one review I wrote, of charging U2 with being a... Well, you're no doubt very familiar with the argument, the whole Led Zeppelin, whatever, the argument, that thing. Do you feel that you've shaken that tag off now, the charge that some people levelled at you of being...
predictable?
Being sort of... another kind of superstar rock group taking up where the sort of 1975 left off, Do you feel that the last two? I mean, I do, but I mean, do you feel that the last two albums, especially, have proved those doubters wrong?
Yes, I do. I obviously was, I disagreed
from the start.
Yeah,
yes, right.
I didn't really. I could see maybe why people were interpreting us in that way, but I always thought of U2 as a band that were always destined to swim against the tide, And if I could define that sort of 70s thing, it seemed to me to be the point at which rock and roll no longer was rebellious in any shape or form, but it seemed to just... Society caught up with rock and roll, and suddenly it was, everything was okay, and it was just like it was the status quo, really. And I always knew that we weren't like that whether it was just perversity or what, we would always buck that sort of image, that we were safe or we were predictable. In fact, we were always prepared and tried to be, to challenge people, challenge ourselves firstly, and challenge listeners, what have you. Whilst being successful, we never really wanted to be a sort of cult group, one of those, forgotten groups that critics and people in the know raved about and no one else ever heard about.
Right.
We always thought that was a waste. So, I can understand why people miss at times the sense of experimentation in the group, but I never subscribed to that idea.
Well, I listened to October again, and I think I still found it lacking in the sort of charge that, Gloria, I still grant you, is a magnificent song. It was lacking in the charge that the first singles had, the first single and I Will Follow, and a few other songs on Boy, and lacking in the charge that the third album.
Yeah. Right.
I still found that and find it a disappointing record.
It's Adam's favourite record, actually.
Really?
Yeah, and I haven't really decided yet. In some ways, I see it as very flawed work because we were in a situation where we just didn't really have time to decide what the record was. The record was whatever we had at that moment in terms of material. It's a terrible thing. I look at, for instance, Lloyd Cole, and I love that first record, Rattlesnakes, and I see, this is the age-old problem. You've got a second record to come out. You've got to do it because you're not yet in a position where you can sort of stop the whole, cycle and take time off to get the next record that you want.
Right.
You've just got to accept what you have.
Yes.
And in that respect, I think October is flawed. But at the same time, there's some very, very powerful feelings and emotions within the group at that stage, which I think we've captured in the album. It's desperate at times, and I think it has a sort of world vision, or certainly a European vision, that Boy definitely doesn't have. Boy is a very introvert, very personal. It's almost, I don't know. Sometimes I feel slightly embarrassed about Boy. It's so sort of open or something. But October is a direct result of our trips around Europe and Britain. I mean, I suppose being able to look back and see Ireland in some sort of context.
Yeah.
We wrote October, and songs like Strange in a Strange Land are, direct references to, say, the Berlin, corridor and all that. But I think with a little more time, that record could have been different. What I like about it, I suppose, is it does capture some of the sort of raw sides of U2, in the same way that maybe Elvis Presley in America does on the newest album. It's like U2 undressed is how I think of October.
I think to me was just compared with there seems to be a radical break between October and War, just in terms of the sound, and I wondered whether he'd maybe sat down with Steve Lillywhite and talked about the sound.
Well, actually, I sat down with Bono and Larry and Adam. We all did.
Yes.
We said, well, look. First of all, we felt like we were in danger of becoming a bit of a self-caricature in terms of our sound and some of the other things. The guitar sounds that I was using, though they were unique in a way to me, I think there wasn't enough diversity, or that's the way we were thinking. So we said, well, look, let's try something a lot more raw and a lot less atmospheric, and that was War. In fact, War has got some very atmospheric tracks. Drowning Man still is my favourite U2 song.
Really?
But that was the sort of feeling we went into that record with. It was also, I remember, a reaction to a lot of the things that were out at that time. I can't remember specifics, but there was just in the band this opinion that the whole energy of the 77, 76 movement had been dissipated, and suddenly it was like back to 3-minute pop songs. The only good thing about them was, I suppose, they were now written by the bands performing them rather than by some superstar producer, like in the 70s. But there seemed to be just no real power or energy to it anymore. So War was something of a reaction to that, I think. So it was very definitely a decision to shift into a slightly different plane for that record.
Yeah.
As a result, I think in a way it was slightly one-dimensional in a way. I mean, if I have any criticism of the record, I mean, there are a lot of contrasts, but still there's a sort of overriding atmosphere, certainly from the vocals, which is very sort of desperate, very very aggressive, very angry. I think that was a product of Bono's wish to produce something angry, but he didn't want it to be accusing. That's something that that happened somewhere between writing the lyrics and performing the songs. It's not the lyrics themselves, I don't think, so much as the performance of them. He has talked about this since, having listened back now to the record. It was an incredibly tough thing to do, to finish that record on time, because at that stage we really had deadlines. Because of financial reasons, we just couldn't stay in the studio, and there were already bookings in after we left. So there was a good deal of pressure on Bono for the performances of the vocals. Some of the lyrics hadn't been written, so he was, getting those on mic again. And I think some of the atmospheres are as a result of that desperation, which is a true desperation, and his, voice to get the thing happening.
Yeah. You're talking about swimming against the tide, but you seem to have really cleaned up in America. You appeal to.
Well,
you seem to appeal to just about everyone, which I think is lovely. I mean,
yeah.
You seem to have probably kind of heavy metal fans there, foreigner fans, new wave fans. I mean, I saw kind of REM and Husker Du T-shirts on Saturday, and every kind of area is warm to you.
Well, it's a kind of unique situation in this country. We've reinvented the sort of touring strategy
Yes.
for breaking a band,
That's right.
which no one did for a long, long time. I mean, when we first came to the country, we did lots and lots of small clubs and stuff, and our album sales have never related to our live business.
Really reflect.
No, there's been no correlation really. I mean, relative to other artists, I'm saying.
That's right.
We don't sell albums as many as you would expect from our live business.
That's right.
And I think that the diversity that you see at our shows is purely that these people have seen the shows or have heard about shows through friends, and they're just coming along because they know we're a great live band. I'm sure a lot of them wouldn't buy a U2 album or something, obviously, because we'd sell a lot more albums. I haven't really come to any final conclusion on it yet, but I was wondering the other night, it was a real off-the-wall thought, what would it be if we just stopped writing albums, producing albums, if we just wrote songs and toured all the time? It would be it's such a wild idea. I mean, it's gratifying to see an audience like that, but the actual act of travelling around, wherever you are, travel, I think, is an incredibly tedious and boring thing.
Oh, I'd imagine so.
Being in a new place is great, but actually getting there is awful.
Yeah, I was disabused of the glamour of that from, I suppose, quite a while ago. So it must be quite exhausting.
Yeah, but those audiences are amazing.